hosted by four-time Emmy Award-winning producer Frank Pace and retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet Billy O'Connor. Brought to you by We Can Coffee Company, manufacturer of freshly roasted premium coffee blends delivered directly to your door.
This week's guest, highest-ranking firefighter to survive the 9/11 collapse of the World Trade Center, Richard Picciotto.
My brother
Frank. How are you today, pal?
Good. I'm really good.
So you got the FDNY 343 hat on?
I do have the FDNY 343 hat. It's a very special show.
Pretty solemn occasion.
It's our salute. It's our salute to 9/11. The 20th anniversary of 9/11. We're going to have Richie Picciotto on in a few minutes. Richie was well. Why don't you tell us a little about Richie?
Well, Richie was the highest-ranking guy that survived the collapse. He was inside the building, so it's going to be a very interesting conversation we'll have with him. And he wrote a book about it called "Last Man Down." I met Richie after 9/11. I met him on a sailing trip at,
a sailing trip, or did you go to Vegas?
No, it was a legitimate sailing trip. But you're right. It's funny. Firefighters, I mean, as you know, Frank, because,
my dad was a firefighter for volunteer firefighter for 60 years.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously what we do can be heroic. 99% of the time it's routine. Sometimes it's heroic. But firemen never talk about the heroism. They just don't. It's something like, it's their job. It's what they just assume that that's what they do. And the majority of the time in the firehouse, the downtime is always spent breaking each other's balls. And like you mentioned, I used to go into the firehouse in 16 and 17 where I worked in the South Bronx. And they had a big thing up on the board all the time. Fishing trip. Sign up for the fishing trip. And I'm not a fisherman, But every year I'd come in and the names would get longer and longer. There'd be 20 guys, then 30 guys, then, And I said, what's with this fishing trip? Why is everybody so all psyched up for this fishing trip? The guy said to me, what are you, stupid? We're not going fishing. We're going to Vegas. So they used to go down. They used to get down to the Fulton fish market and everybody hold up a fish and take a picture of it for their wives, And they all go to Vegas. But that's the deal with firemen. It's just, the ball breaking was always what I remember about the job. I mean, of course, I witnessed some incredible acts of heroism. But, and everybody on that day, 9/11, especially the guys that didn't make it, and the 343 guys we left, which is significant by the hat, were all heroes. And the guys that did make it were heroes as well, But that's just the job. But I give you an idea. Joe DeMutt, who was always my go-to guy for breaking balls, we had a guy with a short fuse, Jack Ryan, really short fuse.
Irish.
Yeah, Jack. And the X Factor, there was so many Jack Ryans on the job. He was number 9. That was his nickname was. He was the 9th Jack Ryan on the job. So everybody just called him number 9. Well, we were playing golf with number 9. And like I said, he had a short fuse. And the very first hole, what'd you get, Jack? 7. And somebody says, wait a minute, Jack, I think you had an 8. Oh, yeah. He says, an 8. So the Mutt looks at me and he gives me a wink. And next hole, what'd you get, Jack? 5. 5? Butcher says, 5? He goes, yeah. And he goes through the whole deal. I had a 5. Next hole, what'd you get, Jack? 6. 6? And that's all. By the 4th hole, Jack wouldn't even get out of the car. Like he wouldn't even play. I mean, and it just was constant ball breaking.
You talk about Jack Ryan 9. On the LPGA tour, there's like 9 Mina Lees, Mina Lee. So they go by Mina Lee 1, Mina Lee 2,
really?
Mina Lee 3, Mina Lee 4, all the way through 9. It's funny. But
before we do go to Mitchie, a quick story. I told you I met him on a sailing trip, and there was a guy on a sailing trip, Tommy Martin. Real ball breaker, deputy chief, funny guy, great guy. And firemen, again, we love firefighters. We love bosses. The bosses come up through the rank. And the bosses that are amiable, that are, affable guys like Richie, firemen love to work with them, especially when they know their job. If they don't know their job inside out, they don't want to know nothing about them, But Tommy Martin was one of those guys. We were on a sailing trip. Real quick story. Quick story, Derek, I swear to God. And we had a guy, Steve Lonigan. And Steve had married a nun. You know, he married a woman that was in the monastery and she couldn't take it. She went over the wall. She was an escaped penguin, basically.
Right.
She went over the wall. And so we were always breaking his balls about, you know, marrying a nun, you know. So we're on this sailing trip and I wasn't drinking. I had finally quit. And so it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I get up on deck and here's Tommy Martin. He's got this $3,000 Nikon camera, beautiful camera. And there's this beautiful rainbow sluicing into the Caribbean. And he says, wow, what do you think? I says, oh, gorgeous, man. I said, you going to take a couple of pictures of the rainbow? He goes, no, not really. He's drop your bait, let me get a couple of pictures of your ass. So I'm a firefighter. I don't give a shit. So I drop my bait, he takes a couple of pictures. Next morning, same thing. He's up on deck with the camera. I'm not drinking, so I get up on deck at 6:30. Hey, Tommy, you want to go and take a couple pictures of the island? No, not really. He says, drop your bathing suit. He goes, let me get a couple of pictures of your family jewels.
He needed a real wide angle lens for that.
Yeah, a zoom. So I says, I don't care. I says, Tommy, but what is it with you and this camera? I mean, I don't give a shit, but but what are you doing? That's all you've been doing this whole trip. You know, pictures of Bob's ball, Joe's junk. What are you doing with this camera? He says, oh, this ain't my camera. He says, it's Lonigan's. He goes, that nun does everything for him. I can't wait till she develops these pictures.
His wife? His wife.
What kind of trip were you on?
Hey, I just want to say, I didn't consult with you on this, but I'm going to make a statement anyway. Our book is out. It's combustible, and Derek can give you a close up of Billy. It's a story of Fireman's Road to Hell takes a detour at 9/11.
Yeah, it's fiction.
Let me say, for everyone that buys this book based on this podcast, we'll donate $2 to 911day.org. So the place to order it is a Mick, a Mook, and a Mike.com/books. So anybody who orders it on the book on our website will donate $2 to 911day.org. So
that's good, Frank. I like that. That's a nice thing. And before we bring Richie on real quick, and Richie, we'll talk about Richie's book as well.
Right.
Just a quote by Mary McNamara, who was a Pulitzer Prize winning critic who read the book
for LA Times.
For the LA Times. And she said, in the fast-paced, vivid story of faith and fire, sin and salvation, an Irish-American New York City firefighter faces all the demons of his past and his profession. With the kind of describe that bar detail, syncopated dialogue, and dark humor that would make Sam Spade proud, Conical Cullen is the rare, hard-bitten hero who is actually seeking a force greater than himself and hoping to actually find it, even among the ruins of one of this country's greatest tragedies. And that certainly was one of this country's greatest tragedies.
Yeah.
And it's the 20th anniversary. And
so for everybody who buys the book at a Mick, a Mook, and a Mike.com/books, we'll donate $2 to 911day.org. So before we bring Richie on, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, weekendcoffee.com. They deliver premium blends right to your door. They also will donate one free bag of coffee to a first responder, a military bag for every 10 bags of coffee that they sell.
Which is a really nice thing. For every 10 bags, either a first responder or a former
firefighter or a veteran
gets a bag of coffee.
Yep. So with that, let's bring Richie on.
Yeah. Be good to see my old friend. Richie,
hey,
my brother, how are you?
There he is.
Hi, guys.
How are you, my friend?
Good.
I see good, thank you.
You got a copy of Last Man Down up there. Good. We've been showing it ourselves on the website all week. It's a great read. I mean, I read it. I guess it came out, 18 years ago, Richie? 19 years ago?
Yeah, probably around 2003.
Yeah, I read it when it came out. You were kind enough to autograph a copy for me.
And it was a New York Times bestseller, right?
It was a New York Times bestseller, and it's been translated into approximately 15 languages. I don't know exact. I didn't know I could write in the languages, but I guess I can.
Well, I always thought you spoke 15 languages, but you spoke them all at once. But I met Richie on a legitimate sailing trip. I think we were in the Caribbean, right, Rich?
Yeah, it was a fun time. Very fun
Always.
time.
The firefighters, that's the deal. Once you're a firefighter, you're a firefighter forever. And we go on golf trips together and, fishing trips.
Fishing trips.
And trips to the Caribbean. Sailing trips, skiing trips.
Skiing trips, yeah. I got a quick story if you want to hear one about Tommy Martin with the camera. We're on skiing.
Martin was one of the best.
Somewhere in Colorado, and Tommy's there, and we rented a house, bunch of firemen, and he has two daughters. They came to visit us in the house, but Tommy was out skiing. So this other fireman, Jack Culkin, another chief, never met the daughters. He says, "Here, come here, quick." They go into the bedroom. He hasn't pulled the top of their shirts down, so just you see their shoulders, and he gets in the middle. And he's got Tommy's two daughters, and they take Tommy's camera, and this is before digital, it's all film, and they take a bunch of pictures of Jack in with both of Tommy's daughters with Tommy's camera, and then just leave it there. So, a month later, he develops the film. But that's typical, like Billy says, that's typical firehouse.
And of course, that went right up in the day room, I'm sure. The pictures.
Actually, Tommy brought the pictures in to show everybody.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, they guys, they're great. They never ending.
So, Rich, why don't you tell us how 9/11 unfolded? How did the day start? What was the day like? Were you at the firehouse? Where were you?
I was at my firehouse on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I get in early. We have early, relief. If a fireman gets in early or a chief gets in early, I can let the other chief go home. So it was a day tour. I was coming in for a day tour, which starts at 9, but I was in probably 7:30 or so. I let the other chief go home, and I assumed command. And like I usually do before our tour officially starts, you go to the kitchen, you bullshit with the guys, you have a cup of coffee. So I was doing that because it was still before 9 o'clock. I think it was like 8:45, and we hear over the intercom system that a plane hit the World Trade Center. As soon as I heard that, my mind started racing. I'm thinking back to 1993 for the World Trade Center bombing, and in '93 I was a newly promoted chief. I was down there. I was one of the first on the scenes in '93, and my assignment in '93 was to evacuate the North Tower. So that building was only evacuated once, and I did it. So even though I'm a chief, I still can't self-dispatch myself. So I called the dispatcher and said, "Listen, you got to send me down. I got a lot of knowledge of these buildings." And I evacuated the only time in history it's ever been evacuated. And he sent me down. On the way down, I saw what we all saw, another plane crashes in, people jumping. I say the first fireman that was killed actually was killed when someone landed on him. So it was a horrendous situation. But I knew a lot about the buildings. I knew a lot about the whole structure. 16 acres. They dug a hole 100 foot deep, 16 acres. Took all that rock, dropped it into the river, and reclaimed 40 acres of land. Battery Park City is reclaimed land for the World Trade Center. I knew each floor of each building was an acre. I knew he had 110 acres above grade, another 10 acres below. I knew how many elevators were in the building. I mean, these are huge buildings. Each tower had 99 elevators.
Wow.
Only had 3 narrow stairwells. The buildings were not built according to New York City building code or fire code because they're part of the Port Authority. So we had problems with that. But these are things I know. I went in, I got an assignment, go up to the 23rd floor, which I did to help people. I took a truck company with me, a Ladder 110 from Brooklyn, and we got up to our initial assignment. After we did that, I told the guys, we got to get up to the fire floor, which this is the North Tower, the first tower to be hit. Going up to I got up to about the 35th floor, and I'm on the 35th floor of the North Tower, and all of a sudden, building starts shaking, noise, banging. I don't know what's happened, but it's loud. I didn't know at the time, but it lasted for 10 seconds. I would have told you it lasted for 30 seconds, but it lasted 10 seconds. And that noise was actually the South Tower coming down, the building right next to us. Once that happened, I got on the radio trying to find out because I thought something was happening in the North Tower. So I'm trying to call to the command post, The command post was set up outside the south tower because the first tower was hit to the north tower, so they set up the command post far enough away that it wouldn't be infected. Now, when the south tower was hit, they didn't move the command post. So when the south tower collapsed, it collapsed on the command post, killing a lot of the staff chiefs, my bosses, the chief of department, Pete Gansey, and the people I'm trying to communicate with to find out what happened. And when I tell you I'm communicating, we had some major problems with our radios. So they're very sporadic. You don't know if your message is going out or coming back in. But I eventually found out that the south tower collapsed just through word of mouth. And then I'm trying to get direction. What do we do now? Do we keep on going up or do we go down? And no one's saying anything because the people I'm trying to get directions from are dead at the command post. So I make a decision. I said, we take risks. We take calculated risks to save lives. When the south tower collapsed, the north tower was burning for an hour. Most people that die in high-rise buildings don't die from heat. They don't die from fire. They die from smoke inhalation. And usually they're unconscious 4 to 7 minutes, and a few minutes after that, they're dead. So the people that we're trying to get to, they've been in this heavy smoke for an hour. So not really too many of them still alive. So I'm trying to communicate. I can't get anyone. So I made the decision. I got to get these people out. I got to get the firemen out. So I gave the order to evacuate, get out of the building as fast as possible. When the planes hit, the 99 elevators went right through the core of the building. Most of the elevators were in the center of the building, the core, and all the offices were on the outside, where all the windows. When the planes hit, they went right through the building, and deposited a lot of that fuel in the building. That each plane, I didn't know at the time, it was a 767, had 400,000 gallons of fuel.
Wow.
400,000 gallons each one. A lot you see coming out the building, but you don't see the fuel that remained in the building and was in the elevator shafts and blowing up and down and putting all the elevators out of service, most of them anyway. So we had to go up and we had to go down. We had to evacuate through the 3 narrow stairwells. And that's what we were doing. So from 35, we're going down, trying to evacuate as many people as possible. I never went above 35. There were a lot of firemen that got there before me that were above. I hope they heard my message to evacuate. I gave it over the handy-talkie. I went to each stairwell to repeat it because we have problems with high-rise with all the metal floors. But in a shaft way, hopefully that radio message went through. And then I also had a bullhorn, and I said to evacuate with the bullhorn. And people up and down heard it. And I waited for a few minutes till I saw that the firemen stopped, reverse direction, started going down. And then I repeated that at the other 2 stairwells, and then I started going down. On the way down, I stopped at every floor, doing a quick sweep, making sure no one stayed back for anything. There are a few stories that I don't have time to go into unless you want to hear me here for a couple of hours. They're in the book. You could read about them. But eventually I got down to the approximately the 6th floor. And when I was on the 6th floor, that noise I told you about earlier, that banging, that shaking, well, it starts again. But a lot louder, a lot more violent. You can't believe how loud it is. And on top of that, not only the noise, the shaking, but when the south tower collapsed, the lights stayed on in the north tower. I was able to see. As soon as the north tower started going, it went black. So I'm in this black darkness, and the building is pancaking. Floor upon floor is banging down. It's banging down on the next floor. And it's pushing the air in that building down. And what that's doing, it's causing like a wind. It's picking us up and throwing us around like rag dolls, like a tornado. So it's black. I'm being tossed around. And
were you by yourself at this point?
No, there were a lot of firemen. There were a lot of firemen that were getting out. So there were firemen in front of me, behind me. There were firemen mostly firemen, and civilians too. But mostly firemen.
But on the 6th floor, were you by yourself, or were you with another?
No, I was with again. There were a lot of firemen around.
Great.
And what happened? That building collapsed, and I collapsed with it. Took the North Tower, well, it took the South Tower 10 seconds, took the North Tower 8. I knew it was happening. You know, what are you doing the last 8 seconds of your life? And then, actually, you know, I thought about my family, and then I prayed. I prayed, please, God, make it quick. That's what I wanted.
Now, those 8 seconds, you said you thought about your family and you prayed. So those 8 seconds played long for you. They didn't.
Oh, they did. Yeah. You know, it was blackness, and we're being tossed around. But you know, you're thinking, and I know this is the end. You know, I'm going to be dead in a matter of seconds. That's what I'm thinking. So I just didn't want to suffer. I think that's everyone. When we die, you know, we want to go peacefully, or if it's not peacefully, we just don't want to suffer.
Richie, were you a man of faith before you prayed?
A little bit. Not, you know, I go to church once a year or so.
Has that changed?
Not really. Not really. But you know, I have my own faith. I have my own faith. I believe that there's a lot of good in the world. I believe that there's good people, and I also believe there's evil, and there's evil people. And you know, a lot of people are good. I mean, firemen, what we do in general, you know, policemen, we're good people. We help people. You know, military. After 9/11, so many people I know, so many sons joined the military. They wanted to protect this country, and they still do.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good people in this world, but unfortunately, there's some evil ones too.
So let's go back in the building now. It's a minute or so, and you realize you're trapped. What were your thoughts? And continue the story.
Well, initially, the noise was tremendously loud. The violent shaking, we tossed around like rag does, and then I'm free falling in blackness. And then in a split second, black silence. I literally thought I was dead, because it's so loud and so violent, and you know, I'm being tossed around, and then I'm not moving. It's black and silence, and I thought I was dead. And then I tell people, I thought I was dead. It's hot and smoky. I said, uh-oh. You know, I don't want to be dead with hot and smoky. But I realized I was alive. I called out, is there anyone else here? Because I had a sixth sense that I wasn't alone. I called out, and there were other people there. And like I said, like Frank said, there were 13 other people there. 11 of them were the New York City firemen, one Port Authority police officer, and one grandmother, a black woman that worked for the Port Authority. So who the firemen were helping out. So I told everyone, don't move, don't want to cause a secondary collapse. And basically, we just stood there. We all had lights and flashlights and handy talkies that we were trying to communicate with the outside. After a few minutes, I told the other firemen, I said, shut your handy talkies off, shut your lights off, because we have to conserve everything we have. We have to conserve our batteries, because they're all short term. You know, we charge our radios twice a day at the beginning of each tour. So they're short term batteries. They're not going to last for long. So we'll shut them off. When one goes dead, we'll grab the other one and grab another one. And I started calling Maydays and started calling for help. And after some time is very sketchy, but maybe an hour and a half or so, someone answers me. And it was another chief, Mark Ferran. And I tell him I'm trapped in the North Tower, the B stairwell. And the first thing he says is, Richie, you can't be there. There is no North Tower. And, you know, from the outside, both towers are gone. The rubble is, 30 foot high. And they didn't even know where the tower was at that point. And when both towers came down, it crushed the Marriott Hotel, which was between them, and then started fires in all of surrounding buildings. Buildings 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the World Trade Center complex. Some of these buildings were 42 stories high, and we have fire out every window. Any one of the buildings on fire would have been the biggest fire ever in New York City, and now simultaneously they're all going. So it was just a horrendous.
So it was blowing out every window in the explosions.
In the explosions, every window was So all that smoke is mixing with all the dust and obscuring Lower Manhattan.
So what were your thoughts when he told you you can't be there? There is no North Tower.
Um, I knew I was alive. I also knew the buildings collapsed. So I said that is 110 floors of debris on top of me. So I was thinking about the previous Father's Day. We had a fire in Queens, a 2-story masonry building that collapsed. We had 3 firemen in the basement. Had the whole New York City Fire Department there, or we could call on the whole city, fire department, and we couldn't get them in time. We couldn't get 3 guys in a 2-story building.
Wow.
So what's the chances that anyone's going to get to us in a 110-story building? So my thoughts weren't too pleasant, to say the least.
When those planes hit, Richie, did they take the standpipes as well? I mean, they deposited all the fuels in the middle.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did. Again, it wasn't built according to New York City code. So, which I think is wrong. You put a building, especially that, a complex that holds up to 40,000 people, and it's not built to New York code, but if there is a fire, they expect the fire department to go in there and put it out.
So continue with the story. It's
trapped.
It's a gripping story, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
But we're in there trapped. I'm trying to make contact with, and then finally I make contact with Mark, and they're trying to get us, and he gets a bunch of firemen to help with him that he's directing in towards us. And again, in the book, I describe how Mark's guys are trying to get into us and how, persistence. They keep on going. They can't go anymore. They retreat and they go in again. They retreat and try to go in a different way. They finally, and while this is going on, it's black because, like I said, I told everyone to turn their lights off. So we're sitting in blackness. And then all of a sudden, above us, there's one little spot that's getting bright. When I say bright, it's dark gray, but it's getting brighter and brighter. And I'm looking at it, I'm staring at it. But at this time, too, it's a couple hours that we're in there. And I'm also getting very lethargic, very tired. I took my turnout coat, just laid it down. We never bunched up because I didn't want a secondary collapse. And I think that, I'll get lethargic. I'm thinking to myself that, I'm just going to close my eyes for a little bit, take a little nap. And a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. I'm realizing that what's making me tired is it's probably lack of oxygen or carbon monoxide or something that's putting me to sleep, which was a pleasant thought compared to what else I'm thinking. I think if we're going to be in here for months before anyone's going to get to us. So if I just fall asleep, that's going to be good. But I could see this little bit of light. So we never moved, we never bunched up. But after a while, another hour or so, I told everyone, just stay where you are. I'm going to climb towards the light to see where it leads. And I climb up, and then all of a sudden, I'm out on top of the biggest pile of debris in the whole debris field. Wow. And we're right at the top of it, which was the remnants of Stairway B in the North Tower. Stairway A and C were in corners of the building. B was in the center of the building where all the elevators were. And a little portion of B from about the 5th floor to not maybe the 4th floor to the 6th floor remained. But it was all filled with, it was like a cave, a vertical cave filled with debris, and stairs were missing. But we were there. The 13 of us were in there. Once I got out, I could see this big debris field, acres. But what I didn't see is no one in it. I didn't see any firemen. There was still a lot of smoke and a lot of dust. But I called, I'm outside now. And Mark and his guys they weren't even in where the debris field is, but they were trying to get in. They eventually got in through building 4, through the Borders bookstore, through the basement. Because that building was on fire, but not the basement. So they came in through the basement, and once they got to where we were, the basement got involved in fire, so we couldn't go out that way. So now his guys are stuck with us in the interior of the building. not of the building, of the complex. And we're trying to get out, and it's still very acrid. There's still a lot of smoke, a lot of dust, and we're getting very good, because now that we're out, our radios are working better. We're getting very good information of which way not to go.
So did everybody follow you up one by one?
Followed us down. Well, eventually followed us up from the interior. Then I'm on the pile, and then they climbed down. And I talk about that in the book a little bit, how precarious it was. And I kind of went first and took a rope that one of the firemen had and tied it off at different places so they could, use it as a guide to help them get down. But there were people that were injured that were with us. Firemen were injured. A couple guys were trapped. A couple guys were crushed. I talk about the 13 of us, but that's the 13 that survived. There were a couple other firemen that I was talking to that were with us, but did not survive. So I mentioned them in the book, but in person I don't talk about them. But those of us that could move, climbed down, and then we met with Mark's guys, mostly firemen from 43 Truck, and they didn't know how to get out either, because they came in through Building 4, but now Building 4 is fully involved in fire, and so we kind of meandered. We were meandered. Sometimes we were going north, sometimes going south. We started trying to follow each other, but then someone climbs up a big pile of debris and can't go anymore and says, "We can't go this way." So he's at the top now. He ends up being at the bottom because someone's going a different way. So we kind of meandered.
Let me ask you a question. The crack of light that you saw initially, was it like a pinhole of light? Was it a crack of light? Was it?
It was a little crevice, not immediately above us, but it led to it. But we couldn't see it for the longest time because of all that smoke and all that dust. I mean, that dust, like I said, covered Lower Manhattan. I have a bunch of pictures I should have unloaded for you guys that we could have pointed to things. But, that crevice was there the whole time. But when the smoke and the dust was, like I said, there were all these other buildings. There had to be hundreds of windows fully involved in fire, and fire coming out and smoke coming out, mixing with all the dust. So it took hours for that to settle.
And you separated. You just separated the rubble until it got wider and wider that you were able to finally poke your head through and gain.
Yeah, I was able to see. We climbed out and climbed out through this stuff. It was rubble, but light was getting through, and it was light from the outside that, like I said, it was filtered. It was filtered out completely for the longest time because of the smoke and dust. And eventually I got out. I went to the command post because they knew, a few of us were trapped, and I was telling them, you got to send more people in there because we got some seriously injured firefighters that need help.
And how long were you trapped? About 4 hours?
Between 4 and 5 hours. I know what time the building came down, but I don't really know. I wasn't looking at my watch to know what time we were getting out, or I just don't know. But it was about 4 or 5 hours.
Now, as bad as that air was, when you first got out, that feeling of being out of that tomb must have been absolutely
I'm out. Because up until that point, even though we're alive, I thought it was a tomb. We're alive in a tomb, and there's 100 floors of debris, 100 acres of stuff above us. So they're never going to get to us. Never. When I say never, they'll get there 2, 3, 4 months later. I mean, the recovery effort. At first it's a rescue, and then when they don't think there's any more people alive, then it becomes a recovery. The recovery lasted almost 9 months. How they kept on digging deeper and deeper and deeper, and removing stuff, and they have to check through all the debris that they remove. And we lost almost 3,000 people that day, and at the time was over 1,000 people. They didn't recover a bit of it, not a piece of DNA. So that's how terrible it was. And they kept on looking.
The recovery was painstaking. I mean, firemen were taking debris and putting it into 5-gallon buckets, and they're passing it hand to hand, like a bucket brigade, inspecting every inch of debris.
Right.
And
Right.
1,000 people, absolutely no recovery whatsoever. So I would assume that a lot of that dust and a lot of that toxic atmosphere was crushed bone.
Yeah, there were people in that. Along with, a matter of fact, you found very little recognizable items. Like chairs, table, desks, computers, books. Stuff that you'd find in an office. Mostly, what you found was metal and that dust, which was like a powder, like talcum powder. It was so fine, but that talcum powder was. I explained it to people when these buildings came down in 8 seconds, 10 seconds. All that metal grinded like a grinder. You put something in a grinder and you have the blades hit it in a couple seconds. Well, that was a huge grinder. All that metal grinding up anything that was in its way. Like I said, very rarely did you come across recognizable objects, but sometimes you did. Sometimes you find a coffee cup or a ring. I think someone's ring. They found, I forget what the number was, but they found a bunch of clatter rings. That's the Irish ring with the heart. Things were found. You'd find a shoe or something like that, or a boot. Actually, there was a boot in where we were. It was a fireman's boot. We have leather boots, like stormtrooper boots. They look like, and it had the name of the fireman who I happen to know. So it was just stuff like that. And he was not recovered, but his boot was.
Yeah,
so crazy.
2 years ago, I was in New York, or 3 years ago, I was in New York producing Murphy Brown, and 4th of July weekend, I went to the site, the museum. I know Billy, as a first responder, hasn't been able to go back and see it. Have you been able to go back and see it?
Yeah, I've been there quite a few times. Actually, I was invited on opening day. I was on stage with one of the dignitaries, because they had the people that were in the survivors that were with me. We all were invited back, and I've been back a few times since then.
It was very powerful.
It is very powerful, and especially if you personally knew certain people, like 3 Truck. They have the whole truck there, and the captain of 3 Truck was Patty Brown, who I knew we were firemen together, up in Harlem. So, and there's things like that. There's pictures and things that I personally know. Billy would probably know a lot of them also.
Yeah, of course, everybody, knows Patty Brown. Everybody was on this job knows Patty Brown. Did he win a Silver Star in Nam, or was it a bronze? I think he got a Silver Star in Nam.
I don't know. I know he was a pretty remarkable guy. He was a simple guy, one of the most eligible bachelors in the city.
Yeah. Yeah, he was,
and he loved it. And he was into a lot of stuff. He was like I think he was a professional boxer at one.
Well, he won our Gordon Bennett Award, right, which is our highest award for bravery. He won it 2 years in a row. Is that right, Patty?
No, I don't know. No, I think there's only been 2 double winners.
But he was a remarkable guy. Absolutely.
Yeah, he really was. He was Vietnam vet and tremendous fireman. He was very hard nosed. Like semi-military. Military bearing.
Hey, let me ask Billy a question. You mentioned Vietnam vets. What percentage of firemen were Vietnam vets? Would you recall?
I couldn't tell you the exact number.
I mean, not the exact, but just give me was a large.
Well, in my firehouse, I can speak for. In my firehouse, there was 4. Out of 25 guys. So it was like 4. So I don't know what the exact percentage is, but Patty Brown was an exceptional firefighter. And let me ask you, Oreo Palmer was the guy who got the highest up. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. Well, as far as they know, Oreo was, got a funny name, Oreo. Oreo Palmer. Nice guy. It was a Norwegian name. Again, a very nice guy. He ran marathons, like most firemen, very good shape. He got up pretty far.
Up in what?
Up in the building itself. I think he got up
in the building.
Up to the 80th floor or something.
Yeah, I think he got up. He got up pretty far. Where he was. I helped NIST National Institute of Safety and Standards. They asked me if I could listen to. They had copies of a lot of the communications that, but they didn't know the fire department jargon. And I actually listened to Orioles, some of his transmissions, and had to explain what he's actually saying, because he's using fire department terminology, and the people that would translate it didn't understand our terminology. They were assuming different words and wouldn't understand what he was actually saying. So I was telling them and then translating for them for a few of the communications that they had. And like I said, one of them was Orioles.
Now, you were a deputy at this time, or you were a battalion chief?
I was a battalion chief. I was the senior chief in the 11th Battalion.
And exactly what is a battalion chief?
A battalion chief is above captain. A lieutenant supervises 5 or 6 firemen in a tour. The captain supervises the whole house. So the captain has usually 25 firemen, 3 lieutenants, and the captain. A chief supervises a battalion, which is made up from anywhere from 5 to 10 companies, engine companies, the ladder companies. So usually around 7 or 8 companies, but up to 10. So a lieutenant would be in charge of 6 guys at any one time. The captain's in charge of, say, 25 or 28, including the lieutenants. And the chief is in charge of 7 to 10 companies, and that could be like 250 to 300 people altogether.
And 25 comprises a company?
25 firemen usually in a company, yes.
So,
and it's a 24/7. There's, out of them 25, 5 of them are on duty at all times.
Well, since you've talked so vividly about this, we've got a film from 911day.org that Derek's going to put up, and I hope that Richie can see it. And I hope that Richie can see it because it's really good. It's a public service announcement, and it's going to be.
It's about a 2-minute clip.
Yeah, about a 2-minute clip.
I hope you can see it. This is Jay Winnick. Play it forward. It's pretty much, well, it's self-explanatory.
There you go.
Let's clear frame, guys.
Can't see nothing in front of me. Can't see nothing coming.
There once was a place where our differences did not matter.
Where strangers stood shoulder to shoulder with outstretched arms and an urge to help.
Where neighbors showed up for neighbors and everyone was our brother or sister.
Connected by nothing more than wanting to do good.
Where everyday people dropped everything to pitch in.
To be a frontliner, a rescuer.
A hero when it mattered most, no questions asked.
To get back to that place, all we need to do is remember the 11th of September.
9/11 was a tragedy of unspeakable pain.
But it was also a moment of togetherness.
And a reminder of what we have in common.
A time when people were willing to give whatever they could.
Even at the risk of their own well-being.
A moment of compassion, when we all felt more alike than different.
Because in that moment, we were in a state of unitedness.
9/11 proved we're not really divided.
Not when it truly matters.
So to honor the 20-year remembrance of 9/11 and those lost, let's once again take a moment.
A moment to do a good deed this September 11th.
Done by me, you, us, and millions more.
Dona tu tiempo. Dona un abrigo de invierno.
Or just hold open a door, that kind of thing.
Deeds big and small, that would be a start.
Let's get back to that state of unitedness.
And let's never forget what we're capable of doing together.
So there it is.
Yeah, that's pretty moving, Rich. I think you'll agree. That's Jay Winnick lost his brother down there at the site, and he had this. Oh, you saw yourself at the recovery how everybody came together. You know how dowagers were making sandwiches for first responders and everything else, and he had this idea that just to do a good deed, you know, for the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I believe they're going to be showing that on CNN and other networks as well.
Yeah, there was so much good that came out. It was tremendous how people, came together. I tell a story. I was at my firehouse. It was a couple of weeks after September 11th, and my daughter was with me. She was a college student, and she was down in Pace University, which is lower Manhattan. She was outside. She saw the plane hit. She got enveloped with the dust cloud. They closed the school for the whole semester. She was deeply affected. But one day in the firehouse, a tractor trailer pulls up, and a real southern redneck guy comes out, nice guy, and he says, "What do you want to do with all these oranges and grapefruits?" He had a whole tractor trailer full of them, and they wanted to donate them to New York City. So, I didn't know what to do with them all. So I said, "Well, we'll take a couple of, pallets, but we can't take a tractor trailer." And I said, go to other firehouses. So they dropped off a couple of pallets of oranges and grapefruits. So the local people were coming in, giving us everything. So this little old Spanish guy comes in, Spanish man. He comes in, and he's got a box of donuts. And in broken English, he's saying, for the firemen. And he had dirty clothes, and you can see he didn't have anything, but he wanted to give. So my daughter is telling him, no, you take it home. You need it, because we had food, we had everything being donated. So I got her on the side. I said, Lisa, they have to give. They want to give. Take it. Tell them how much the firemen love these donuts. They're the best ones they ever had. I said, and give them a dozen oranges and a dozen grapefruits to go home with. So we took his box of donuts, gave him all these oranges and grapefruits, and he walked out being happy because he helped.
Yeah.
He helped.
Everybody wanted to help.
What were your emotions like when you discovered that there were terrorists behind the attack?
Oh, I discovered it. I knew right after the first plane hit. I knew this was terrorism. I knew it right from the start. Like I said, I was there in the '93 bombing for the Trade Center, and knowing New York City, knowing I took flying lessons. Planes, it's a no-fly zone over the city, especially planes don't. There's been couple instances where planes have accidentally flown into a high-rise building, but few and far between, and not during a bright day, sun shining.
Just parenthetically, my mom was working in a bank in 1943, I think, in the Empire State Building.
Empire State Building, yeah.
When a plane flew into the Empire State Building.
That was the biplane, right?
Yeah, I think so. And
what back then they didn't have the navigation equipment they had. What they did is back then they used dead reckoning, which means they would fly to a point, a high point, and that was it wasn't clear, and they were flying to the Empire State Building. That was the point, and then when they got close enough to it, they would turn. That's how they flew back then. So it was an accident, but they were flying towards the Empire State Building. That was their point of direction that they were going to.
What do you say, Rich, to these people out there? And there's so many, conspiracists. What do you say to these people that just don't get it? You know what I mean? What do you say?
Yeah, I do some talking, some inspirational speaking, and I used to do some teaching in the fire service. So I get these conspiracy people occasionally, especially back 15, 18 years ago. And I would just cut them down, especially they talk about Building 7, which is the building that collapsed later on. And again, I can tell you a lot of things about that. But it's ridiculous. I mean, the CIA did it. There was bombs planted. There was controlled controlled demolition. I've heard all of them. I've actually had people send me things. I'll tell you, I once happened. I was it wasn't Vegas. It was not Vegas, but I was in the casino. I like to play cards a little bit, and I'm playing poker with some people who I didn't know. And there's one guy sitting at the table, and he's saying the whole thing was a fabrication. It never happened.
It never happened. Yeah.
And then he's going at the table. He said, "Have any of you known anyone that saw it?" And I'm sitting at this table. and you know, a lot of times I don't argue with people. Although I mean, I love to argue about certain things, but I wasn't going to argue with him. So I told him. I said, "Listen, I was." And he says, "Yeah, but did you actually see it come down?" And I said, "I was in it." and he still didn't believe it.
Yeah, you can't argue with these people.
Yeah, I get annoyed at him now. I mean, I tell him that, you know, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You know, it's stupid. The conspiracy things, especially, you know, I mean, most of it's about building 7, which, you know, there's things that the general public is not aware that, like, they built OEM, Office of Emergency Management, we're building a new bunker. The term bunker is, you know, and they're building in the World Trade Center.
Ricky, why don't you just explain what Building 7 is?
Building 7 is an office building that's in that 16-acre plot of buildings of the World Trade Center. It's actually right next to it. It was just a big building. But a lot of people don't realize what was underground in these buildings, the World Trade Center. Because they were super secure. So, you know, like one of the things that was there was the biggest gold reserve in the world by the Fed. More gold was in the World Trade Center than was in Fort Knox or any other place.
Really? Wow.
Yes, that's.
But that wasn't near Building 7. That was in the main.
That was in the towers. Yeah. Right. Also in the towers, you know, in the bunkers underneath. Also, it's where the CIA backed all their records. Everything they had was backed up in a bunker in the tower. So they were afraid that, you know, if people got it, they have access to all the CIA records. So, you know, and they wanted to assure that they got the hard drives from these computers. Now, everything was crushed and everything, but since they were downstairs in bunkers themselves, maybe the bunker was secure, and that's what happened. And I can go into a whole story of the gold. Once they found the gold, the city wanted to say, okay, it's not a recovery anymore; it's a cleanup. We're just going to pick everything up with these big claws and dump them into damn dump trucks, and, you know, put them in the city in the landfill. And the firemen said, no, we still have a lot of our brothers in there, and we have a lot of, and we wouldn't leave, and we were still technically in charge, and that caused a big problem because we just wouldn't leave, and they started arresting firemen because we wouldn't leave the site. They wanted to give the site back, take it away from the fire department jurisdiction, and we said no. And basically, more and more people were getting arrested, and then they held a meeting. They said, okay, let's we'll let you. It's not a cleanup. It's still going to be a recovery, and we recovered a couple hundred more bodies. Yeah, you know.
This is the no man left behind mentality.
No man left behind. Yeah, and I'm just thinking about what the hell's going on now in Afghanistan. When you know, look at what's happening now in Afghanistan.
Well, the no man left behind. The no man left behind mentality at 9/11. And who was arresting it? The cops were under orders to arrest?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was mostly a lot of the union guys were the first ones. They said, arrest us first. And, you know, they would have had, I think they would have ended up arresting half the New York City Fire Department. Right. But they relented and kept it. And like I said, after that date, they recovered, a lot of remains. And that means a lot to the next of kin and the families.
Let me ask you a question, Rich, and again, just as a lieutenant, and a guy who failed the captain's exam, by the way, which is one of the reasons I wasn't in that building that day.
And I think you cheated on the lieutenant's exam.
You're not the only guy who said that, by the way. That's the general consensus, it seems to be. But what I always explain it to people, and again, this is Vinny Dunn with collapse. When you got a pancake collapse and it's coming down in that kind of weight, well, every 5 or 10 floors, you're going to that energy is going to seek its least resistance, and it's going to look like a detonation.
Right.
Is that
blowing
correct?
out? Yeah. And and like I said, it's pushing the air down before, the air's being pushed down and, before the building's coming down. So it is, blowing out the last of, least resistance.
Right.
So it's blowing out the windows and everything. And that's what it looks like. Because before the building comes down, the windows are being blown out below, and people have high-speed films at sea, and that's a controlled demolition. They were lighting off. And when you explain this, and they said, well, how do you know that? I said, well, I was actually in the goddamn building, and I felt the wind coming down.
And the fact that you were tossed around like a sock in a dryer, I mean, that's the amount of energy we're talking about. And that noise, it must have felt like 6 subway trains. I mean,
it was loud. It was a roar that was loud and getting louder.
Hey, Rich, let me ask you a question. How much time were you on the outside encountering this demolition before you got stuck inside? Was it 2 hours into the after the flight, or 3 or 4? How long had you been before you got trapped on site?
Well, as soon as I got down there, I went in. I went into the North Tower. I went up. I got up to the 35th floor, and I was on the 35th floor at 9:50.
Okay,
and I know because that's the time that the South Tower went down.
So about 50 minutes, I guess.
Yeah, about yeah.
I heard people saying that their most vivid recollection of that day was the sound of bodies landing on cars and hitting.
Without a doubt. And in most vivid recollection, and I was in the lobby, when I first got there, and then bodies were coming down, and you could see, I was doing it too. The firemen were cringing, like every time, bam, bam, slap, slap, and that was a body hitting. Like I said, the first fireman that died, Danny Sir, he died when he got hit by a body. So it was horrendous.
People don't understand that. They say, how can you jump out of a 100-story building? Well, if you held your hand over a fire for 2 seconds, you'll get the idea that there's nothing you can do about it. It's a total reaction.
The only people that don't jump are people not near the window. Like that's what I tell them. I say the heat is. It's like if you're drowned, and you're going to do anything to get out of it. But the heat is even worse. It's singeing your whole body.
Well, it's like you said before. You're in that 8 seconds that you had. You said, "Let me go fast." So, we're jumping would be a much more pleasant way to go than dying in smoke inhalation.
Right. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah, and you don't even get to think about it. I mean, it's a reflex action. Your body is not going to react to the red hot stove theory. You touch a red hot stove, you're going to jump. That's it. It doesn't matter if it's 500 stories. You're going.
To try to keep your hand on it. If you take your hand away, then something will shoot you in the head. Well, guess what? As soon as you touch it, you're going to take your hand away.
And you're going to get shot in the head. Exactly right. There's no way.
So, Rich, what are you doing now? How long have you been retired from the department? And
I'm retired like about 18 years. I wrote the book. I started doing some. I always did a little bit of teaching in the fire service. I thought when I retired I would do that, do a little bit of lecturing about various fires I've been to. I've been to some pretty unique fires and had some unique experiences before September 11th. But then after I wrote the book, people wanted me to talk about the book and give lessons learned from the book, and I've been doing that for a while. And
how long were you on a job?
I was a police officer for a couple of years first, and then I was on the fire department. So I had 30 years in when I retired. Well, and I always thought that was the time I wanted to think about retiring, not before I put 30 in. not that I was going to retire with 30. I explained to people how firemen don't leave. They got to push them out the door, kicking and screaming, as opposed to police who, once they have 10 years in, they can tell you how much longer they have to go before they retire. They're counting the days, and it's the nature of the job. I mean, they're hated and we're loved by the general public.
Yeah, because you're there to save people's lives.
Yeah, we're both doing honorable professions, but the public doesn't see that with the cops. And I was a cop. They don't see that the cops are there to help them, but they know we're there to help them. They don't.
The fact that you say you were a cop, I've met a lot of guys on the job that were cops. There's very few cops, I'm sure, that meet firemen that switched over from firemen to cops. That they don't go that way. They come
very few. There were over 1,000. 20 years ago, there was over 1,000 firemen that were former cops. Yeah. And I think the other way, I don't think it was 20.
Yeah. Well, Frankie Santiago comes to mind immediately to me because Frankie got a finger shot off when he was a cop, and he worked in some very busy houses for the past, etc.
I actually know some guys that were. I know a bunch of cops, but I know some detectives. I know a couple of sergeants, and I know one lieutenant on the PD, and he goes all the way back to being a probie.
Wow, that'll show you.
And it takes a huge cut pay, to do that.
I haven't seen you, Richie, now in about until today in about 7, 8 years, I guess.
Yeah, it's been a few years. I think the last time we
pretty
saw
good. I think you've had a little work done. You want to show me behind the ears there? I think you have.
Yeah, a little work. I lost a little hit. Yeah.
I think you've had a couple of lifts, Rich. Come on, tell the truth. Shame the devil. Tell the truth.
Yeah, I wish. I gained about 50 pounds in the last few years. That's about as much work as I've had done.
Well, I got to tell you, Richie, I'm delighted you came on today. And for our listeners out there, for our viewers, Last Man Down is an incredible read. I read it twice. It's been on the shelves for a while, but it's the 20th anniversary is here now, and it's one man's account of what went on inside that building. And there's very few people that could tell that tale.
And is it available on Amazon, Rich?
I believe it is. I think it's only available in the paperback. The hardcover is not available anymore, but it's available if you want to order 1,000. So,
well, I'm sure there are some people that will use it. For
I have a few boxes, and usually I did it a couple times. I ordered that many. I leave them in my garage and sell them piecemeal. But I do have some. If anyone wants, they can contact me through my email, which is bcpitch@aol.com. The battalion BC stands for Battalion Chief, and my last name is Picciotto, so bcpitch@aol.com, and I'll sign it, autograph it, and personalize it, and send it out if anyone wants.
I've read it, and I could personally recommend it. It's a hell of a read, Rich. It really is.
Which, as is Confessions of a Bronx Bookie, which I was just talking about it yesterday.
Well, that's good to hear, Richie. I appreciate it. We've got a few more out since then. Let's hope we can keep going.
I know.
Well, listen, brother, I love you. You know that. And I want to thank you for coming on. I really do. And that's a gripping account that you gave us and gave our listeners and readers, our viewers today. So
And to both of you, thank you for your service and for all you've done. I know Billy said that his 20 years on the job were the proudest 20 years of his life. I know, Richie, I have a feeling that they were the proudest years of your life also.
Oh, I loved it. Loved it.
So thank you both for being here. Unfortunately, I've got to continue the show with him.
And not you.
and not you.
But I still think you had work done, you hump. I still think you had a couple of lifts. Come on, don't bullshit.
I'll tell you, but I do. I'll let you know. Let me see.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you, Rich. Love you, brother.
Okay, take care, guys. Nice talking to you.
You betcha. Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty gripping. When you hear that story, I can't imagine everything going black like that, and then the noise and knowing that you're trapped in a tomb, and that's what you're in. You're in a tomb, and why am I not dead? I mean, that's the first question you have to ask yourself. Why am I not dead? Why me? Out of the 343 firemen, and I meant to talk to Richie about it. how many guys we have lost since.
Yeah, that's, the carcinogens that must have been in the air that day are incredible. Incredible.
I don't know how many guys we've lost since, in the thousands, I'm sure.
Well, I remember when our guest last year,
Frankie Santiago and Cujo.
yeah, they said
John.
they used to look forward to the phone calls because that would mean somebody was retiring or there was a cause for celebration. Now, when they get a phone call, the inevitable thought was, "Oh my God, who died today?"
Yeah, and I got to tell you, Frank, myself. I mean, like I said, firemen never lose contact. After the job is over, there's always the golf trips, the skiing trips. And I don't make as many as I used to because I'm on the West Coast.
The golf trips,
yeah,
the fishing trips.
But I mean, the fact that we do stay in touch, and I get calls every day, still horror stories. Pray for this guy, bone cancer. Pray for this guy, lung cancer. Pray for this guy, eye cancer.
Pray for this guy to GERD.
What is eye cancer? I mean, what is that? I never even heard of eye cancer.
Yeah.
It's never ending, and of course they told us that the air was fine 3 days later. Not to worry about anything.
They told you.
They told us.
They told you.
But
who's they? I wonder.
Yeah,
always
the
they.
powers that be, Frank. The powers that be.
It's those 100 pockets.
I'm sorry.
Speak up, Derek. Speak up. We can't hear you.
It's those 100 pockets you talked about in the last episode.
The 100 yeah, the 100 pockets.
Yep.
Yeah,
which was very profound, Frank.
Thank you, sir.
That was very profound, Frank. The 100 pockets.
Thank you, sir.
But again, that was Richie Picciotto, and it's another somber show for me. The 20th anniversary is particularly somber, and I want to give a heads up to Jay Winnick, because I think that 911day.org is a wonderful sentiment that what does it take to bring us together? And that day we all certainly did come together, and for weeks after, down at the dig.
Well.
And to do a good deed, just do the right thing.
Yeah.
Just do the right thing.
Yeah. Well, Richie mentioned Confessions of a Bronx Bookie.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be an entree or a lead-in to who you going to pick this week, you mook. NFL season starts tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night, huh?
Thursday night.
I got a hot one for you, Frank.
Okay.
I got a hot one. Bet your lunch on this one, fellas.
Here we
This
go.
is the one.
By the way, we're going into our second. We're in our second season now. Last year, Billy, you were 8 for 8. You were 8 up and 8
8
down.
up, 8 down.
8 down against the spread. Me,
on the other hand, who don't even know which game Derek's going to pick for me, and who's going to be the spread, was 12 and 4. So, do you have a pick for me this week? Well, you want my pick first? Because
Yeah, of course.
Since I was 8 and 8, I mean, I should be able to.
I don't want to pick your pick, so
Right.
please, you get the first choice.
Well, Atlanta is playing the Philadelphia Eagles at home, and Atlanta opened up at 4, and I believe the line is down at 3.5. I'm going to take the Eagles plus the 3.5 on the road against Atlanta.
So you're picking
Philadelphia Eagles plus 3.5 on the road against Atlanta.
So you're back to your dogs.
I'm always doing dogs, Frank. I'm a dog guy, Frank. I've been an underdog all my life, Frank. You know what I mean? Want me? I'll throw you a game, and I'll give you the spread.
Okay.
The first thing I want to say, though, is, Billy, haven't you learned?
No, I'll never learn. Haven't I learned from my past errors? No.
And during those years that Billy and I never met, but were in contact, I was always rigorously looking for his tails, his pick of the week, and I was always thinking that they were merited. They were based on some merit. I found out. No.
But nobody wins over the long haul, Frank. Trust me. 10%.
Yeah.
Is 10%.
So this year I'll probably be 4 and 12.
Well, we don't know, but I'll bet my lunch on this one, Frank. I'm betting my lunch on Atlanta.
Okay, I'm betting
on Philly.
I'm betting your lunch on it too.
Okay, so give me a game.
All right, I got a game, but I just want to point out one fact from this game. First of all, we're going to go with it's the lowest ticket price on the list for tomorrow night, right? So in other words, in order to get into
for this weekend.
Yeah. So Jacksonville against Houston, and they're playing in Houston.
Wow.
And you know why I picked Jacksonville?
Yeah. So Billy, what's the spread?
The spread last I looked was Jacksonville was 2.5 over Houston.
2.5 favorites.
Yeah, and even though they're playing at Houston.
Okay, I'm going to pick Jacksonville because it'll be Trevor Lawrence's debut.
Mm-hmm.
And Houston's a mess. Currently a mess. Lamar Jackson's probably not going to play. They'll have some, proficient quarterback under center at Houston, but first-year coach. This is one time that I'll say they got
to go with Urban Meyer.
I'll go with Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence and everybody else in Jacksonville. Plus, I went to Jacksonville University, so I normally don't pick on those bases, but that'll give them an edge. It's 2.5 or 2.
You said 2.5, I think.
It's 2.5.
Right. So I'll go with Jacksonville.
Jacksonville laying 2.5 over Houston from the guru himself. Now, I like that you said that because you went to Jacksonville University, you usually don't stay away from those teams. The first thing I used to do was, as a New Yorker, was take the Giants and the Jets and throw them out the window. And I try and handicap the other games. Because the Giants and the Jets will break your heart every time.
Yeah, my sense is that Trevor Lawrence will come out blazing. The NFL hasn't seen him. He's got some receivers, but as they get some film on him, he'll be reduced efficiency for the rest of the season until he's been in the league about 2 or 3 years, and then he'll.
Well, there you have it,
Be
fellas.
a great star.
I want to jump into this a little more. So first of all, why do you guys think the tickets are the lowest ticket price?
Well, what does that tell you?
I don't know. What does it tell you?
There's the least call.
Houston is a mess. You said, right?
Houston's a mess, and
you mean the mess from the plague?
No, a mess.
Their team is a mess.
Their team is a mess. They have a first-year coach. There's not a lot of interest in Houston.
Right, and that's the other thing I was going to say, Billy. You got to be careful with this one over here.
You think he's cute, huh?
Well, I want you to look at all the details that he had. I picked a random game, and he knew a lot of insights, a lot of background, a lot of history.
But he also picked Jacksonville, so I read the Jacksonville paper every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a little bit more insight on Jacksonville. I lived in fear that you would have picked, I don't know, any other game. any other game.
Well, listen to our viewers out there. If Jacksonville wins and if Philly covers, this is the thing you want to do with the money. Combustible, right here.
Yes.
This book is a hot book. And I don't mean this in a flippant way because of the fire in the front, but it's a real good read.
And we'll donate $2 for every
to widows and orphans.
Well, it's 9/11.org. 911day.com. Anybody who orders on a Mick, a Mook, and a Mike.com/books. And with that, I just want to give a call out again to weekendcoffee.com. Weekend Coffee will donate a free bag of coffee to the first responders and military families for every 10 bags they buy. They deliver premium roasts right to your door. It's a great product. It's a great service they're providing to first responders. First responders, I can't thank you enough for all you do for the rest of us schlubs who sit back and take you guys for granted.
Thank you,
Frank. Guys and gals, first responders are terrific people.
Thank you, Frank. We appreciate it.
With that, bet Jacksonville.
Bet the house. Bet the rent on it.
Bet the rent.
Okay, thank you very much for tuning in. As always, we certainly appreciate the support.
Thank you so much. Bye, Derek.
Goodbye, Derek.
Goodbye, fellas.
Next week's guest, multi-talented actress, singer, and author, Adrienne Barbeau.